From 12 News, your local election headquarters, this is Newsmakers.
In their first live televised debate, four Democrats seeking to replace Congressman Jim Langevin in Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District squared off in our studios.
It's about $7 billion.
Our most recent 12 News Roger Williams University poll shows Seth Magaziner with a large lead over his competitors in the Democratic primary. Were the others able to level the playing field? A political roundtable breaks down what you need to know this week on Newsmakers. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News politics editor Ted Nesi, and joining us on the political roundtable this week, Joe Fleming, our 12 News political analyst and longtime pollster, and Cara, a political strategist. Good to have you back on the program.
Thank you.
All right, I want to bring up the survey poll results for the 2nd Congressional District one more time just to set the table. 37% of likely Democratic voters chose Seth Magaziner. Sarah Morgenthau and David Siegel each get 8%. Joy Fox with 4%, followed by Omar Ba with 3% and less than 1% to Spencer Dickinson. A full 37%, however, of voters we polled are still undecided. I should say the poll was conducted from August 7th through August 10th. So that tees up the debate for the roundtable here. A lot of people, Joe, are undecided, right. But when the survey came out, you told us that this was Magaziner's to lose. Right. Were any of the challengers able to do anything to change that in our debate last Tuesday?
Well, with 37% undecided, one of the challengers needed to step forward and really be forceful to get those undecided voters. I don't think any one challenger was forceful enough to grab a majority of that 37% of undecided voters. I personally believe they probably split that in many ways. The voters are now starting to focus on the race as we're getting very close, but no one stood out enough, in my opinion, to grab a big majority of those undecided voters.
Cara, what was your takeaway from the debate?
I agree with Joe. I think that somebody probably needed to make a really big move. I thought that Joy Fox was very serious, and if you're looking for a very serious candidate who's obviously very local, and you haven't made up your mind by now, you'll give her a second look. But I agree with Joe that somebody needed to make a big move, and it didn't really happen. Yeah,
we were looking, as we're preparing to moderate that debate, getting our questions together, we were wondering if, with Magaziner being the lead in the polls, if they were going to attack him. Mm-hmm. We didn't see a ton of that.
No, and I think people have to remember the dynamics are different when you have a lot of candidates, as you do in this primary field. It doesn't look very impressive to see that Seth Magaziner has 37% support, but in what do we have, 6 candidates on the ballot? 37% is plenty to win. Lincoln Chafee became governor with less than that because of a packed ballot back in 2010. So, the other candidates not only need to make a big move from the level of support Joe found in our poll, they need to get past Magaziner, who has vastly more resources on TV. He's got this huge ad buy now from the League of Conservation Voters backing him up. And then there just aren't a lot of issue differences between Magaziner, Joy Fox, and Sarah Morgenthau. So it really comes down to, does someone want a woman as opposed to another man being elected to Congress as a Democrat? Do they just have a personality difference, as Cara said, or their backgrounds? But in the end, with Magaziner starting so high, you'd really expect them to try to give him a black eye to try to change the dynamic.
I thought Magaziner tried to move more towards the middle in the debate. For example, on student loans, the others were saying that $10,000 is a good start, it should be even more. Seth Magaziner said, I wouldn't do that. I would have the interest on the loans reduced greatly. Also on the Supreme Court, Seth Magaziner said, I don't want to expand it, where other people said they did want to expand it. I think these are issues he's concerned about for the general election. But with the Supreme Court, I thought Morgenthau had a good opportunity there. She said with the Supreme Court that Seth changed his opinion on the way that should be done, and she never followed up on it. Right. She had the opportunity, she stepped back.
And in fact, not only, just to point out one of the weird things about this year's campaigns, I'm actually curious what Cara thinks as a communications professional, but Morgenthau said that. I expected we'd see a news release from them right after the debate saying, Magaziner flip-flops or something like that, showing where they say he said at one point and what he said in the debate. Not a peep. So that's the other thing that's going on with these races. Very little of the usual kind of thrust and parry we're used to in campaigns, especially down to the wire.
I suspect a lot of that's about kind of capacity to get things done at this point. The candidates besides Seth, who's been on the ballot now, he's a statewide elected official for 8 years, it's really been about name ID and getting themselves out there. I mean, Sarah Morgenthau is not well known because she hasn't lived here. and other folks have not had their names on the ballot before. So I suspect that's mostly about the campaign's capacity to respond, because they're still in that name ID part of the campaign that, you know, Seth showed up and had name
With
ID.
a week and a half left.
Right, exactly. And that, you know, that's not a position anyone wants to be in. So you won't get the negatives because of that, and you also won't get kind of that parry that you talked about.
I do want to get to a little bit of the debate in a second, but before I do that, Republican Alan Fung, of course, was not in the debate because this is a Democratic primary debate, and he's a Republican candidate. But did Fung have a good night nonetheless?
I think he had a decent night.
Well, let me quote Dan McGowan from the Boston Globe. Fung won the debate.
Well, again, what Fung was looking for in this debate is to see if the Democrats make any comments or statements that he can use against them in the general election. I think that's where Seth Magazine was being very careful on what he said during the debate. I don't know if Alan Fung really benefited that much from the debate, but he was a factor in the debate.
All right. Go ahead, Cara.
I would just say that anytime the Republican is not getting airtime, the window between the primary and the general election is very, very small.
Yes.
And the fact that you all and everyone else has focused on this primary for so long has been a real disadvantage to Alan Fung.
Airtime, good, bad, or ugly?
Exactly.
I will just say briefly, I know from talking about Fung campaign, they disagree. They've indicated to me they're happy they got to lay low all summer, let the Democrats, you know,
not
fight
spend
it
a lot
out,
of money,
not spend a lot of money, husband resources and everything. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but that's how they're viewing it. They're like, great, we're going to come out fresh as a daisy. He put out his first campaign ad this week, and we'll see if they're right strategically.
All right, I do want to play a section from the debate. Ted has become the criticisms guy in our debate.
Someone's got to attack in this race.
If there was so this section here is you asked each of the candidates about a criticism of the candidates, and here's how it went.
All right, I want to ask each of you about some of the criticism you've faced in this campaign. And Ms. Fox, I'm going to start with you on this. Your campaign has begun critiquing Mr. Magaziner, comparing him to a frog, leaping from lily pad to lily pad because he switched from running for governor to running for Congress. But your former boss, Congressman Langevin, doesn't see it that way. He says Mr. Magaziner is the best choice as his successor. Why should voters back you if your own former boss, who you're looking to replace, doesn't think you're the best option?
Because I have deep roots in this district, which give me a deep understanding of the challenges that we all face, and I've spent my career working to make a difference in this district. It is no secret that one of the bigger issues, one of the bigger political issues in the general election here will be where we all live. And I take that right off the table. I will put my hometown girl up against Alan Fung's hometown boy all day long. I have also worked in both the governor's office and Capitol Hill and Congress, so I bring that experience to the table. And I'm the only one up here that can say that she's been part of a team that has beaten Alan Fung twice, and I know that we can do it again, and I'm pretty sure he does too.
Mr. Magaziner, as I said, Ms. Fox is comparing you to a leapfrog, and she's told voters you are, quote, just looking for a job. And many have noted you still don't own a permanent residence in the 2nd Congressional District. How do you respond to this criticism that you're an opportunist?
Yeah, well, listen, I spent the last 8 years working in every community across the 2nd Congressional District with people to solve problems. You know, I advocated in Burrillville with nurses and families to keep the Zambrano Hospital open. My school construction program that I launched is building new elementary schools in Cranston and Johnson. I've worked in Westerly on flood mitigation and rising sea levels. So I can be an effective member of Congress for the district because more than any other candidate in either party in this race, I've spent deep time in every community across District 2 working with people to solve problems.
Ms. Morgenthau, I want to bring you into this. Your TV advertisements say, and you've said tonight, it's time for Rhode Island to elect a Democratic woman to Congress for the first time. Former Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Roberts and gubernatorial nominee Murth York say they agree, but they say that woman is Ms. Fox, not you. Which prominent elected Democratic women in Rhode Island, past or present, are supporting your candidacy?
Kate Coyne-McCoy is supporting my candidacy, and
has Kate held elected office?
Oh, about state elected office?
Current or former elected officials who are women and Democrats in Rhode Island.
You know, I have been going from community to community and meeting the voters who are excited about having a fresh perspective, not a career politician, somebody who can go to Washington and get things done because she has the experience and a proven track record of getting things done.
But what
and
does
so
it
when
say
I go,
that you're saying how important it is to elect a Democratic woman for Congress, yet the Democratic women who have already gotten elected in Rhode Island are not with you?
I don't think that's true. And as I said, when I'm going from community to community, from town to town, from Burrillville to Gloucester to Block Island, to Wakefield to Westerly to Johnston to Cranston to Warwick, the excitement about meeting me with a fresh perspective.
I want to bring Mr. Siegel into this. Mr. Siegel, you know the conventional wisdom that this district is trending more conservative. You have always been unapologetically progressive, often one of the most progressive members of the legislatures you served in. What do you say to Democrats who might like some of what you say, but say, I don't know that we can keep this seat blue if we put Dave Siegel as a nominee?
Thank you for the question. So I'm very proud of a long record of standing up for progressive values and looking for opportunities to work with people who might not agree with me on every single issue. And that goes back to before my time in the legislature. But to name a couple of examples, I served during the financial crisis when there were cuts being made to cities and towns across the state. And I brought together my colleagues, including traditional Democrats, and even some Republicans were on the mix on this, to try to blunt cuts. We succeeded to the order of at least tens of millions of dollars that were going to be imposed on cities and towns throughout the state and in District 2. And at the national level, I've been a leader on issues like reviving the anti-monopoly movement, where there's left and right cross-partisan alignment, and where we've been able to make progress by ensuring that we get new regulators in place who are actually willing to contest the power of the corporations that have too much control over our economy and too much control over our government.
Just a taste of our congressional debate that happened on Tuesday. If you missed it, it's on WPRI.com. As I said, the gloves never really came off. They loosened the strings of the gloves right there. But you know, there haven't been a lot of attack ads in this, if any, that I can think of. It's a multi-candidate race. They're hard. So aren't debates a very economical way to do an attack, you know, in lieu of an attack ad? And that didn't really happen here.
No, not at all. I mean, debates are an opportunity to define yourself compared to other candidates and attack the other candidates. They haven't been doing that at all. I am totally shocked. I expected the debate Tuesday night to see the candidates going after Seth Magaziner. That didn't happen.
Ted, do they not, just real quick, because I want to play a rapid fire section, the dreaded rapid fire section. Is it possible the other candidates don't want to ding up Magaziner too much going into the general election?
Hard not to think that at this point, right? Like, you know, if they're not all running to win when he's the man to beat, because they're not trying to bloody him up at all. And as I said before, you have to take him out to win this nomination. But look, the DCCC, the Democrats in Washington, have been pretty clear that Seth Magaziner is who they expect and prefer as the nominee. And these other folks, maybe they don't want to get crosswise with the Washington Democrats. By the way, there is a decent chance Alan Fung wins this race, which means everybody might be looking ahead and saying, well, if Alan Fung is a Republican incumbent congressman in 2024, he's going to have a target on his back. Maybe I could be the nominee next time if I'm not seen as somebody who hurt the party this time. You know, so I question that strategically. Like, you're in this race now, but you do wonder when nobody's really taking a shot at Seth.
I also just want to jump in here real quick. The people in glass houses problem, I think, might be part of the issue as well, right? I mean, what are they going to say? He's not from here? Yeah. I mean, is Sarah going to say that? Everybody's kind of got their back moving into the district. That's kind of would be the big thing.
Well, Joy Fox will say that and did say that.
And she has, but that's, I mean, there's not a lot of...
And she had an attack flyer, I should say.
She did, with the frog on it.
There's not a ton of punches to land here.
Right.
If you're not, kind of looking in the mirror and saying, I just moved here too.
We're going to have to go to a break pretty soon, but before I do, it was brought up earlier in the program that being a Democratic primary, there often aren't a lot of policy differences. We saw a few during the debate. You brought up one of them, Joe, which was the student loan one. And another one came up that sort of surprised me during our rapid fire section. I asked the candidates if there should be term limits for U.S. representatives. Take a listen.
I think elections are term limits.
Okay, Mr. Siegel?
I agree. It's not my preferred approach, and the reason that people have been concerned about this is it affords too much power to the lobbyists. And
you oppose term limits for U.S. representatives. Ms. Fox, support or oppose term limits?
Ultimately up to the voter, but support.
Support. How long?
We need to get in there and figure it out.
All right. And Mr. Magaziner, support or oppose term limits for U.S. reps?
Support. I don't think that politics should be a lifelong profession.
And how long for term limits now that?
Probably 4 or 5.
4 or 5 terms? Okay. So Ted, as you could hear my voice, I was actually a little surprised that 2 of the candidates, which we rarely hear from, Democratic candidates, would support term limits.
Yeah, we'll see if they still support them if they win and are heading the term limits they've discussed, because we've seen before people say, oh, I love term limits, but I'm just too important to this country to give it up right now.
I suppose a good follow-up question would have been, all right, if term limits aren't passed, does that mean you're going to not run in 5 terms from now?
But you know what? We've just seen many times the voters. I've rarely seen someone lose a race because they flip-flopped on their term limit. Sometimes, maybe in the right race it could be a problem, but in Rhode Island where incumbents so rarely lose re-election, you wonder if it's seen as sort of something that sounds good to the voters and that they're not think they'll have to worry about that.
It polls well.
Yeah,
it polls well. So obviously Joy and Seth both saw the poll, and the other two maybe didn't.
Yeah, and I shouldn't sound so cynical. It's possible they truly believe it's a good idea, but as you say, unusual for Democrats. And I've just seen enough times where someone says, "Oh, my work isn't done, and I can't fight by that term."
And it's never going to pass, so they're fine.
That's it. All right, we're going to take a break on the program. When we come back, where the candidates stand on whether President Joe Biden should run again in 2024. It's become a controversial question. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers.
From 12 News, your local election headquarters, this is Newsmakers.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside Ted Nesi. Joining us on a political roundtable this week, 12 News political analyst Joe Fleming and political strategist Cara Cromwell. All right, so Joe, in May, we asked likely Democratic primary voters if President Biden should run again in 2024, would they like to see someone else? And the numbers weren't good for the president, especially considering that this was a Democratic primary. Here they are. 41% of likely Democratic primary voters said someone else. 40% Joe Biden, 17% aren't sure. Look, the poll was conducted in May, so I would think that Biden would be doing a little bit better right now. He had a better August.
I think you're right. He had a very good August. His approval rating now is probably about 9-10% on the negative side, but it's better than the 18-19% it was. I think a lot's going to depend on the midterm elections. If the Democrats hold their own in the midterms, you may see Joe Biden come back and run for a second term. A lot's going to depend on what the January 6th Commission and what goes on with the Florida with all the papers and secret documents, how these things play out. Joe Biden has a little time. He doesn't want to make a decision right now. I think he's going to wait and see how things play out over the next 6 or 8 months. But in 2023, probably by June and July, I think he will make a decision.
Well, we didn't wait and see. You asked the candidates if they think that Joe Biden should run again. We polled them, if you will, and here's what they had to say.
Before we move on, a quick follow-up, and I'll stick with you, Ms. Morgenthau, on this. We've seen a lot of mixed opinions on this in the Democratic Party. President Biden will turn 82 in 2024. Do you think he should seek re-election or step aside?
I think he could seek re-election, and as you know, Ted, I think I was the only one who said that publicly when asked a short while ago. Mr. Siegel, President Biden run for re-election?
I think, as with most Democrats, I think that we need to see. I think most people in the party agree on this point. I think that the more that we're able to demonstrate that we care about where people are coming from and what they're going through right now, as with the Inflation Reduction Act, as with the student debt relief.
Do you think President Biden should run again?
I think that, like I said, I think most Democrats agree that it's a little bit too soon to say. We need to get through these midterms, but it bodes well for us if we're actually responding to the needs of everyday people, which it seems like we're increasingly poised to do. And a party that continues to do that.
Ms. Fox, another term for President Biden?
Well, Ted, I'd like to ask what you have against people in their 80s.
I should say my grandmother is watching, and she's 95, but she knows I love her. So I
think if President Biden,
as we're talking about here, and I should say, because I don't want our older viewers to think that this is just picking on it, but we are talking about every leader of the Democratic Party we've mentioned so far in this segment is in their 80s now, and none of you are in your 80s unless you've lied to us about your ages. So that's why this has come up. We had a poll. 40% of Democratic primary voters in Rhode Island were the only share that wanted President Biden to run again.
Yeah, I think if he would like to run again and he's our nominee, I will support him.
Mr. Magazine?
Yeah, so whether he runs again or not is obviously his decision, but he's been on a great run lately. In addition to the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, expanding health care access for veterans, he also just took out the top leader of Al-Qaeda. And so he's been on a roll lately. And if he chooses to run again, I think he'll earn the support of most Americans.
Yeah, I came out of that debate room and had some texts from Democrats whose heads who exploded and like, why can't they just say yes? Just say yes.
Just say yes.
He's the Democratic president. He just had a good month. Just say yes and move on.
Right. In the Democratic primary, is it going to hurt them to say yes?
I tend to think it makes you look wishy-washy to say, oh, I think he might be good. I don't know. I am the Democrat, but I don't know about Joe Biden. It's like, you're rising or falling with Joe Biden, guys. You're a Democratic candidate for Congress.
But they saw your poll, and they're like, only 40%.
Yeah.
Sure, but it does seem they were walking, as Ted points out, walking on eggshells there. Look, Trump is a factor for Alan Fung, I think. We see Alan Fung pulling away from the former president. Is it the same situation for the whoever the Democratic nominee is in this race with Joe Biden?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a heavily Democratic state and it's a Democratic president. It's not like you're wearing a Trump hat that somebody can, run out in every video, right? I mean, no, I think sticking with Biden is the safest thing to do as a Democrat. And again, I'm surprised that they weren't just like, yes.
The other thing is, just to, as people think about it, Biden himself has a great line he's used forever, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative, right? Which is, he leaves chaos.
Everything's relative.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
And think about it. Just play out the string. Biden leaves chaos in his wake if he doesn't run. Kamala Harris's numbers are significantly worse than Biden's, yet she's the natural successor as VP. People talk about Pete Buttigieg coming in. Well, he's still just been the transportation secretary and the mayor. Gina Raimondo is discussed as running. A ton of people get in. Then all these people have to pick sides. Then you don't have an incumbent and the power of the White House behind their presidential candidate if Trump's coming back, or against a Ron DeSantis in 24. So I think sometimes it's easy to downplay what is lost for the Democrats if Biden doesn't run again, even if they are sort of wish it was 10 years earlier in his career in terms of him running for a second term.
All right, I want to pivot to the Democratic primary for governor ahead of our debate coming up on Tuesday. They had their first televised debate this past week, and it was a bit unhinged, I would say. There's clearly no love lost among these candidates, and no surprise McKee is facing the brunt of the attacks. But I have to say, the race really feels like it has heated up in the past couple of weeks. While it was a sleepy summer, the past couple of weeks, the temp went up.
Tim, it's been a very sleepy summer. I've never seen this in my career, and how sleepy it's
That's
been in the governor's race. It's been a long career. But the thing is, they're going after Dan McKee now. If I'm Dan McKee, I'm saying thank you very much, because I thought they were going to go after me back in July and August. They're waiting for the last couple of weeks to go after him. And voters might take that as more of just typical campaign politics at this point. So they have to make a case to go after Dan McKee. I don't know how well they're doing it, and they have to back it up with TV ads, and we're seeing a lot of them come out right now. So it's going to be very interesting in the next couple of weeks, and I think the voters are starting to wake up on this race also.
Go ahead, Cara.
I was just going to say that, I think with such a large primary field and people still trying to get to know candidates, again, that's the reason why they're a little slow on the attack, which makes it a very sleepy season and kind of something unusual that we haven't seen in the past.
But also in a multi-candidate race, if candidate A attacks candidate B, candidate A may not get those votes. They can go to candidate C. So I think they're all being very careful because of that factor
anymore.
also.
The attacks have started, right?
They have started now.
And
they had no choice.
Nellie Gorbea, Secretary of State, who was just a few points behind in our poll, and we can bring up those poll results anytime. Here they are. You see Dan McKee at 28%, Nellie Gorbea 25%, Helena Foulkes at 14%. Again, I want to note that we were, this is August 7th through the 10th that we were in the field on this poll. Matt Brown 8% and Luis Daniel Munoz at 1%, 21% undecided. So Ted, Nellie Gorbea, attack ad. She had a tough time with that attack ad. Why don't you actually, if you could, just explain what happened and the sort of the mess?
Yeah,
in
just
30
briefly.
seconds or less.
Yeah, exactly. And it's inside baseball, but it was not.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
It was not a happy 24 to 48 hours for the Gorbea campaign. They were ready. They put out one last, I think Thursday morning it was. They put out an ad that frontally attacks Dan McKee for the ILO. The FBI investigating the ILO contract. His team handed out, but the ad it mixed Channel 12 graphics with Channel 10 graphics. So first they had to recut it to fix that. Then it turned out they had shown a headline from Mike Stenhouse attacking. Whoa, my seat went down. Oh, okay. Attacking McKee. Folks, it's live television. These things, if you kick these things the wrong way.
Don't get down, Ted.
Yeah, I know. It's so hard. See how hard it is to tell this story? They had Mike Stenhouse in the ad, who's a conservative, attacking Dan McKee on masks, which was not their message. They had to recut it again about that. And so it became this story about the mess of the ad for the first 24 hours.
But was it was a story about the mess of the ad. You brought it up at the beginning of this, which is why I asked. Is it something that resonates at home that she fumbled in the red zone there on the attack ad? Or is it just inside baseball?
Well, look, I don't think voters are voting based on your advertising execution, right? I don't think that's what they care about. I will say, it does feel like it kind of set the Gorbea campaign on its heels a little bit, right? They lost. You have to remember also how it affects the campaign internally. Joe and Cara can speak to this. When you have an ad that doesn't go right, everyone's at each other's throats. Who did this? Whose fault is this? Why did you do this? We have to get this fixed. For a campaign that's 3 points behind in our poll, running short on money, it's just not where they wanted to be last week.
Right.
Yeah, and you got to land a punch. I mean, if you're gonna throw a punch, you better land it. And so it's kind of, and with limited resources, it's demoralizing, I think, for the campaign, but also they didn't land the punch.
We have like 30 seconds left in the show, so I want to ask you this. In real estate, it's location, location, location. For elections, it's turnout, turnout, right?
And Tim, we don't know what the turnout's going to be. There's 18,000 mail ballots have been requested. So far, 5,000 people voted early voting as of yesterday. 4 years ago, it was 117,000 who voted. 8 years ago, it was 128,000. I think the turnout's going to be somewhere between 100,000 and 117,000.
All right, folks at home, do not miss our next debate. It is happening Tuesday at 8 o'clock, live from Rhode Island College. Brown, Folks, Gorbea, and McKee will be squaring off. Ted and I will be moderating that debate. You can watch it live at 8 o'clock on Channel 12 or streaming on WPRI.com. We're getting ready. We'll see you there, Joe. You'll be at home in your PJs eating popcorn. All right, we'll see you next week on
You just hope she's
Newsmakers.
watching.